You're listening to Healing Voices Project, where we share stories and the latest information from people who fight addiction every day. I'm Mike Torville, your host and author of Voices from the Fallen. Thank you for listening, for following, and most of all, for sharing with people you care about. Make your voice count too. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming back again to the Healing Voices Project. I have a guest this week. His name is Richard Johnson from Springfield, Massachusetts. Richard is the program director for the New North Citizens Council, among many other things that Richard is involved with. And I've wanted to have Richard on for a little while, so finally, you're here, Richard. Thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Sure. And you know, you were involved with a lot of aspects in Springfield, a lot of aspects of substance abuse, mental health, even gambling, counseling. You've been in this field for 2 decades now.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I think was a natural kind of iteration of my life, you know, to be involved with helping folks find routes or pathways to recovery from a lot of different experiences they may have had. So. Yeah. You know, I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm able to actually see some of the results of it, and that's really rewarding.
See, that is great, because I can see that this type of work can be very frustrating. You get disappointed a lot. You get there's not always successes, is there?
No, yeah. There's not always successes, but you know, with regard to disappointments, I think that is determined by the level of success that you hope to achieve, and hopefully you're approaching each scenario, each situation, each person as an individual, and recognizing some of what they're bringing and some of what you have to face, and you work through those things.
Mm-hmm. Now, right now, as we said, you are the program director for the New North Citizens Council. One of your primary things that you're doing, yes, because you're on the boards of several organizations. Mm-hmm. And tell us what you're involved with in terms of the boards and different community groups.
So through my work and through personal relationships, I've been able to be invited to participate on a lot of state, local, and regional bodies that have to do with either forming and molding policies around equitable access to care and treatment for substance use, for folks who might be seeking some services around exiting abusive relationships. We also do a lot around helping people, you know, kind of navigate their way through health systems and things like that. Not everybody is comfortable in interfacing with systems and people who have authority positions. So some of what I do is sit on different boards that help me give voice where there are no voices.
And I'd say a voice not only from the work you do and what you've seen, but a voice from experience, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that I like to think that my journey has been the scenic route. I've rarely taken the straight path to anything or through anything. And as a young person, you know, I had my challenges and struggles with substance use, with different traumatic experiences and things like that. So much of what I bring is experiential, you know, and so I can really empathize with some of the situations that people find themselves in from a very personal perspective. And it's led me to be able to do the work and be received by those I'm helping or working with an air of authenticity.
And relatability, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Your path wasn't straight, like you said, you take the scenic route.
Yeah.
And I guess prior to your 20 years into this work, obviously you mentioned your own experiences. What was the path, your own personal path, that led you to where you are now?
Well, I think initially, I think that I had some challenges, you know, going through the school system.
And not to interrupt you, but was that in the Springfield area?
Yeah, in the Springfield school system, you know, as a young person, you're kind of trying to figure out who you are, where you fit in the scheme of things. And so I was always that person who needed the attention. And, rather than doing my assignments, I'm trying to joke with people and this kind of thing. So, ultimately the school department didn't want to provide education the way I thought it should be provided. So they thought I should probably be schooled in a different way.
So you they didn't listen to you.
No, they didn't listen to me.
Wow.
So, yeah, so ultimately I was suspended several times, and then I just decided that, okay, I could get a better education in the world.
I know better than they do.
Yeah, so, I skipped school quite a bit and wind up actually being committed to the Department of Youth Services and sent to the Hampden County Training School, which was here in Agawam. And I spent the longest 6 months of my life in the Hampden County Training School.
What is the Hampden County, or what was? Does it still exist?
No, it doesn't. They closed it down, and I think it's to all youth's credit that it was, because it was a work farm basically.
Where they just call it a training school.
Yeah.
All right.
And they had acreage of piggeries and all kind of vegetables and that kind of thing. But anyway, I survived it.
Yeah.
And got out of there and still went. I was able to go back to school, and eventually they decided that maybe we should try something else. So I was able to go to the Connecticut Junior Republic because the Springfield school system thought that I was just not a good fit for them. And that was a really enriching experience. I was exposed to folks from different parts of the country, and but I was homesick. So when I came home on Thanksgiving vacation, I decided I wasn't going back. But through all of that, my mother was always really supportive of me, but really trying to be supportive of me, but really challenged by my activities. And
you were a teenager is when you were a teen. All right.
Yeah, 13, 14.
Yeah,
and so with her having to defend me with authorities and that kind of thing, the treatment that they were showing her, or disrespect in my view, really set me on a path to try to want to make sure that people weren't treated with disregard or disrespect by folks in authority. And so that was part of the reason that I decided to do human service work. And actually, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just that I often found myself in spaces where I was representing people who didn't feel comfortable speaking up for themselves. So that was the kind of path that gave me entree into being a human service provider.
Okay. Wow. So you had a little bit of bouncing around when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
Because you're an intelligent guy, but at the time school didn't work for you.
No, it didn't. And I think that because I was, kind of intelligent at the time,
At the time, you still are.
Yeah, but it's different because, when you have older people thinking that you're really, sharp and this kind of thing in terms of your intelligence, you believe the hype and you stop listening to those folks who are trying to guide you properly. So some of my path really was, that scenic route, which led me into illicit activities and different things like that, and future incarcerations and having to survive those things and learn from them, and then, bringing me to the spaces that I'm in now.
The illicit activities and incarceration.
Yeah.
You were a young man out of school at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and drug, alcohol, is that what led you there? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think that a lot of young people, when we have a lot of time on our hands and unstructured activities going on, we'll succumb to things that we think make us feel good and make us more popular. So of course I drank alcohol and smoked marijuana, and then moved on to whatever at the time it was THC and different substances that we were consuming, and those things lead you into other areas, because at one point you realize that you're not doing this for fun anymore. You're actually dependent on some of these substances.
You stop having a choice, but you
exactly.
Yeah.
And so those things allowed me to commit crimes and that kind of thing, and then become incarcerated as a result of it. But I think I was always very fortunate in that there were always people around me who saw better in me.
Your mom sounds like one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And my family, they always thought that I was capable of doing so much more than I was, and didn't let me forget it, And so in that way, I was able to actually see a light somewhere that would allow me to kind of remember, what positive aspects of my life mattered.
That light was there a lot. Sometimes you didn't see it.
Well, sometimes I ignored it.
Right. Okay. Just to say, I don't want to go there. But you were incarcerated. Was that because of drugs?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it was because of drugs, because the activities were usually as a result of trying to have money to buy substances and to kind of maintain the habits that I had.
So the crimes would come from the need.
Yeah.
From to do that. You weren't able to do any drugs or alcohol in jail, were you?
Well, that's a misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I had a feeling you'd say that.
In most places of care and custody, there's always access to some form of substances. So, they were definitely available.
And you continued?
Well, to some degree I did. And again, there were folks who were incarcerated who also saw better. They say, you could do one of three things. You can do time, you can have time serve you, or you can run behind some of these guys and never get out of this institution. And so there were always those sage voices within the walls of incarcerated individuals and who tried to guide you in the right way. And fortunately, I listened to some of them.
The one in the middle, that have time serve you, is that
Yeah.
the one you paid attention to?
Yeah, I did. And, I listened to the voice in my head that was my big sister who said, no matter what you do, read. Read something. I don't care if it's even those dirty books. Read. And so I did that. And then eventually I started reading with some measure of direction and purpose and with the intent to understand and learn some things. And so I think that was a saving grace as well.
How long were you in?
So I did many different stints, 3 to 5, 4 to 10s, and ultimately wound up, my longest stint was for a decade. So, significant. And then, I think I got really conscious and I started doing the math. 3 years here, 2 years there, 6 months here, and realizing that, those things were actually adding up. And so there was more of my life incarceration than there was out, so, yeah.
And when this would happen over and over, there was a point, obviously, when it stopped. What changed? What turned things around to stop you from going back?
Well, I think I was faced with the reality that, my life was leaving me behind. I had a couple of children at the time, and, it was just really evident that I needed to be an adult. I was way past 21 before I became a man, I like to say. And by that I mean that I was chronologically an adult, but emotionally I hadn't accepted the responsibilities that come along with being an adult. And I had to make that choice.
And that choice was made certainly by yourself, but also with the support of people like your family, your sister,
Absolutely.
your mom, among others. And so the last time you were in, you got out. What changed? When did you stop saying, okay, I need a new life? I need to, what was there an event or something that pivoted you into the life
I think
you're in
there
now?
was a series of things. I mean, part of it, you don't separate yourself from your reality. So I was incarcerated, and I knew that I would be there for a significant period of time. And so being isolated from the rest of the population for some activities that had taken place, I had to come to terms with what is going to be my direction. I thought about my family, my mother, I thought about my children, and I said to myself, this is the last time that I'm going to be here. I just refused to allow myself to continue to not take responsibility for my actions and depend on others to take care of me, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I made that conscious decision, and then from that point on, I really began to work towards preparing myself for my eventual release, which would be several years down the road. So I didn't wait until 6 months before my release date to start working on me. I needed to come to terms with some of the things that I was running from, childhood traumas and stuff like that. And so I did the difficult work of looking within and saying to myself, how is it that you want to be remembered? How is it that you want to live going forward? And, you know, I needed to be an example for the young people that I had brought into the world, you know? And so doing the things that I had been accustomed to doing was no longer an option.
And in the meantime, you took your sister's advice and you read.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
You read, and then going back to those three choices, having time serve you, meaning you took advantage, if that's the wrong way, but you said, I'm going to use this time to my advantage. I'm going to make the most of this time and get yourself some sort of education and information, and like you said, take that process to change so you're not back again. When you got out, and back to the school days when you said, that's not for me, you've actually overcome that because now you have a Bachelor of Science degree with a concentration in human services. You also have a master's degree in leadership and management.
Indeed.
Well, congratulations.
Indeed.
Quite,
and I have a GED that I attained while incarcerated.
Oh, okay. So that was first,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But to have your bachelor and your master's degree is pretty phenomenal. And now again, you're the program director for the New North Citizens Council. You've been on several boards, committees. I know we share in the Hamilton County Addiction Task Force Committee, and we're a part of that. But you've been involved with so much in the 20 years since you. Well, how long has it been since you got out last time?
It's been 23 years.
23,
now.
yeah. Back then, and I ask this question a lot because I always know the answer. In a million years, could you, back then when you were 25 years younger than you are now, seen what you're doing today? Is this what you could have pictured yourself doing when you were incarcerated?
You know, yes and no. That's one of those yay boo situations where the potential to do the kind of things that I'm doing was always there and nagging at me to make that choice. The flip side to that is that there were always alternatives that were less positive, right? I could have gone in a lot of different directions that would have landed me in some very difficult circumstances. But that idea that you are more than your circumstances stood out and really prevailed. And so the short answer is yes, I could see myself doing it. The steps to get there were a little less clear.
Understood. That makes perfect sense. And here you are now contributing to so much of people in substance abuse and the mental health and these organizations throughout Springfield. You know, I saw something too here. It says you're a certified problem gambling specialist. Not to shift a little bit, but I don't want to forget to mention this. A certified problem gambling specialist. Talk about that a little bit.
So part of what we come to understand is that a lot of people have a lot of, in the work that I do around substance use and around access to care and services, a lot of times people find themselves on the road to recovery, and so they circumvent their usage of substances with their activity and interaction with gaming, whether it be betting on horses or whether it be betting on who's gonna steal more cars in the video games that they play. And so a lot of times, just like the addiction to substances, people don't recognize their addictions to gambling and the things that led them there.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that happened several years ago was that I recognized that some of my friends who were former folks who were addicted to substances now spend a lot of time, you know, playing Keno and going down to the casinos and this kind of thing, and kind of substituted the activity.
It's a dopamine substitute, really, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was important for me to kind of look a little deeper into that and find out how I can, one, you know, make sure that I'm taking the best care of myself. But the other part was being a resource for other people who I found were struggling with some of those challenges. So we did some some research around opportunities to be trained as certified gambling specialists, gambling addiction specialists. And so we've kind of embarked on that. When I say we, it was me and several other people who did some trainings and stuff like that. And since then, I've worked with individuals as well as the Springfield Department of Health and Human Services on some of their initiatives. And so it's been really rewarding in the sense that we've been able to kind of identify some things and help people identify some challenges that they were facing.
I'd like to, maybe not now, in another program, get into depth with that with you more. I don't think we talk about that enough here on the show. But if you'd like, I'd like to learn more about that. We don't have time today.
Yeah.
But we will again if you'd like to come in, because I want to learn more about that. And I didn't want to forget to mention, so it was a little shift away, but now I want to get back. But you're also overdose prevention master trainer and harm reductionist. That's, again, you've got so much on your plate. I don't know how you fit that in, but talk about your overdose prevention master trainer and what got you there.
Yeah. So, again, I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts, where, like many other parts of the country and certainly the Commonwealth, overdose and addiction are hand in hand. And they are so prevalent in so many communities that we really need to have as many people knowing how to reverse an overdose, knowing how to identify the signs of addiction, and being able to really articulate what's going on within their family. Because oftentimes people think that it is just the individual who is consuming the substance that's impacted. But in truth, it is the entire family unit because of the collateral impact and damages that are taken. So we've done some trainings and things and become certified as a master trainer in overdose prevention. And so part of that training includes, again, identifying substances that are addictive, being able to articulate to folks, why, these things might be a challenge for them, and being able to teach them how to reverse an overdose and having the proper equipment available to them.
When you say we, you're talking about the New North Citizens Council?
New North Citizens Council, as well as other providers within the city, because one of the things that is really important for me to say is that no one person does this work, no one agency does this work, and many of the people that we serve don't necessarily recognize borders of institutions, agencies, or cities and towns. So they're going to go where the substances are, they're going to go where the treatment is available, and so we need to make sure that we're talking to each other and that we're able to bridge those barriers that might prevent folks from getting the help that they need.
And with that too, I'll just mention this because again, in my involvement with this goes back a little bit over a year, because we've been doing this program now for about 2 years. And I could just see it, the collaborative efforts through the organizations here in Western Mass, and it's exemplified through the HCAT, the Hampden County Addiction Task Force. And I see the camaraderie, the collaboration between these organizations and the people is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just different than any other field I've been in, because when you have competing, and that's the wrong word in this field, but organizations, they're all trying to outdo each other. This is more of like they're all collaborating, cooperating, helping each other, and I think it's incredible.
It really is, and I think that, I don't want to give the false impression that everything runs very smoothly. There are always challenges, particularly around resources and funding, but what we try to do is recognize what entity does, what the other entity does, and how we can complement each entity and still, write for the various grants and supports that are necessary to provide the resources. And I think that's where the community comes in. Yeah. The community has to be aware of the resources that's available to them and be able to access them and make sure that it's equitable.
Yep. And again, we kind of shifted. I always want to give some context, some history, and some of what you're doing. And what we really didn't talk much about what the New North Citizens Council does, but I want to do that. Yeah. But so we just took a path to get there. So tell us about that and overall, and if people want to find out more about what you were just talking about, preventative measures and how it affects the family and what information, because we could talk about it, but how do you get this information out to people? How do they learn from what you have experienced, from what you're involved with your training? So again, getting the message out is the more important thing. How do people, number one, reach the New North Citizen Council, and then can you talk about what your program does?
So New North Citizens Council's contact information is, our admin office number is 747-0090. We're located at 2455 Main Street in Springfield. That's the admin building. And so my office is the Deborah Hunt Prevention and Education Drop-In Center, and it's located at 34 Catherine Street in the city of Springfield. The phone number there is 747-5755. And so part of what New North Citizens Council does, as a 50-year, we just celebrated 50 years in existence. We're a multi-service, community-based organization. We have everything from a daycare, youth programming, Youth Build, which is a program that deals with teaching young people how to work with their hands and do different things that can provide them a career along the way. We have a program that works with folks who have family members with developmental or physical challenges. We have a program that works with folks who need to be connected with different services, but they have English as a second language or not quite understanding the language of English, right? Mm-hmm. So we have folks who navigate between systems and work with their families. Folks who have children in the school systems who might have either disciplinary challenges or challenges adapting. We have folks who work with their families to help them better matriculate through the system of education. The work that I do specifically has to do with prevention and education around transmittable sexual infections or diseases. Mm-hmm. So we provide counseling and testing at no charge to the person for HIV, for hepatitis C, for syphilis, for gonorrhea, for chlamydia. We do that on site, but we also do outreach to various treatment facilities and congregate meal sites and other things that other spaces where underserved populations might congregate. We have outreach for folks who are unhoused, folks who are inadequately housed, and folks who are substance dependent. We go out and we try to make contact with them, provide them with Narcan, provide them with things that might help them against the elements if they're homeless, to make sure that they have an opportunity to have shelter. We try to make sure that we provide supported referrals to other folks like our partners at HCAT to access other services. So we do outreach. We have physical brick and mortar space where folks can come in, and if they just need to get out of the elements and sit down and be still, they can come have coffee. We can navigate what their needs might be, whether it's clothing, whether it's housing, whether it's food. We can put them with people and programs that are providing those services. So that's some of what we do.
That's just some of what you do.
Yeah, because the reality is that when people come in, they come in with any number of issues. And so our job or our function is probably to kind of help triage those situations and make sure that we're providing them with supported referrals and services that are beneficial to them.
So it's a good starting point for people to go there. And it's the New North Citizens Council, and it's easy to find. Start at the New North Citizens Council, mm-hmm. whether you find it online, and then from there the phone numbers are there mm-hmm. on the website too. With the myriad of services that you do. And you said it's been around for 50 years now. Yeah. And I was looking at it, it's 1972 or 71. Mm-hmm. It's evolved a little bit.
Yeah.
But boy, you've done a lot. You've come a long way. And one of the things I will tell you, because I know, I've got to know you a little bit from the HCAT meetings, and I can see the work you're doing because you're very, like I said, you've have an intelligence, a commitment, and I think one of the things from my own observation, you're a pretty good listener. And why I say that is because usually you sit behind me just by where we end up sitting, and every time there's a guest speaker, and we have guest speakers all the time, you always ask a good question. I was like, wow, and so I could tell you're zoned in, you're tuned in, and I thought, well, that's something I hadn't thought about. And so I think the commitment shows, it's pretty evident. So I commend you for that, and I think the Springfield the city of Springfield, as well as New North Citizens Council, is very lucky to have you for all that you've done. So
thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah.
But I would be remiss if I didn't say that none of this happens just from
Well,
me.
yeah.
There are individuals that help me along the way. There are individuals who say yes to an ask more than they say no, and that benefits the folks that we're serving.
Yeah.
And it's just really a collaboration between individuals who are like-minded and want to see the best for folks in the communities.
And we could talk, if we had time, about the successes and examples of successes. You've seen a lot of successes, and that's what keeps you going, right?
Absolutely. I think that part of what I think is taken for granted a lot are the little wins, the little victories, the smaller ones. Sometimes, people have great victories and they make a great big splash, but it's the incremental stuff that really I appreciate. And that's when folks work through challenges and you look at them in 3 months, you can see, okay, now they are housed, or now they have more permanent shelter. Then you see reunification of families because somebody has taken the hard work on around, putting their addiction at bay and going through the different treatment modalities that are necessary to sustain their sobriety. And you see them in the Walmart or in a Target, and you see the grandchildren or the children with them, and their interaction. And those kinds of victories are the ones that are so much more beneficial, in my view, to the quality of life that they're living and the contributions that they're able to make going forward into society, but more importantly into their nuclear families and circumstances.
See, that's amazing, right? And you say the integration, the way these families get restored, and you see the whole lives and the children and the effect it has on so many people in the family. And of course, use as another example, when you see somebody who has gone through what they've gone through, and often, very often, they end up in a supportive role in this field. Because they can, like yourself, you can relate, can show the experience, it can maybe make a greater impact with the relatability. And I see that happen quite a bit. And
yeah. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And I think equally as impressive is our acknowledgement that we too have to care for ourselves, And part of that care is associating ourselves with people who can recognize in us, whether or not we're doing that self-care, and reminding us to do that self-care, because the business of helping people manage their lives or put their lives together is messy. And there is a lot of residual and collateral baggage that goes along with that. And some of us, because we want to help so much, embody some of those things and don't necessarily compartmentalize in ways that are productive, right? And so we find ourselves struggled and challenging or challenged with how do we manage this? And if we don't seek assistance from folks who are able to do that, then we drown and we take back steps and things of that nature. So I always caution individuals, it's great to have a good heart, but do things in piecemeal. Make sure you have places and spaces where you can restore yourself.
Because if you're not well, you're useless to others.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes you're harmful to others.
That right, especially and the way that this can spread. And again, it's a family, it's a friend, it's a network, it's coworkers, it's their whole surrounding community. And that we often talk about that with an overdose. It doesn't just affect the person who died of an overdose. It's hundreds of people that it affects.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, Richard, thank you.
Thank you
Very much. We're with Richard Johnson from the New North Citizens Council. Richard is the program director at New North. And thanks everybody for listening, and thanks again, Richard, for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you all later. Thanks.